it's Everything's Relative. I'm Eve Sturgis. This is a podcast about the world of the mail-in DNA tests and how it's affecting people. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways, but we are focused on people who are surprised by the results either way. So hi. So I'm recording this episode ahead of time, and I'm assuming you guys know that I do that. So that is about to become relevant to our experience together for two reasons. One is, tomorrow for me, tomorrow for me, but yesterday for you is the 4th of July. So this episode is launching July 5th, Friday. So yesterday was the 4th of July for you, but for me, it's tomorrow. And I had done all this work to get an episode ready, and it was all queued up and edited and finished and ready to rock. So I wasn't worried about tomorrow. But then I was working on a different interview, and I realized that I needed to change my whole schedule. So today we're going to play the interview I had with a woman named Denise instead of what I had planned on. And that doesn't really matter to you because that's all behind the scenes stuff, but it just felt it felt important to talk about for some reason late last night, going, oh my gosh, we need to change all of this because we need to talk about Denise. She was so lovely and calm when she told me the wildest story. She was so calm that the wildness of it almost passed me by. Like in my memory, I had to like really think about it on the drive home. And realize how kind of crazy and wild it is. So, but the reason that we're playing it right now is because the important thing is that her story really comes together and all the pieces fall into place for her on July 4th, 2018. So we are here this week, is Denise's 1-year anniversary of how the understanding of herself and her family as she knew it changed forever, or began to change forever. So I hope that this is not a sad or bad or stressful anniversary for her, but I wanted to acknowledge it. I remember for me when the 1-year mark came, it was just, I don't know, it sort of inadvertently caused a lot of like reflection. So wishing Denise, a happy holiday weekend, and hoping she's getting through it. And I hope I get to touch base with her again soon about how things have been. So the other reason that it's kind of important to know that I'm recording these episodes ahead of time is, so remember, guys, how I'm pregnant? It's still happening. We're almost to the finish line, but if I'm being honest, it's getting harder and harder to have the energy for almost anything. So we have decided that we're going to hammer out the rest of these episodes way ahead of time. And that won't really matter to you, except that my like little intros and outros, like right now when I'm talking, those will not be so timely. They'll be a little bit more sort of just general, like here, and I'm going to talk about this person, and this is what we talked about in the story, whatever. They'll be a little bit less, I don't know, like real time. So just consider it a kind of like impromptu maternity leave while you listen to the next like 5 or 6 episodes. And there'll be a little break after that, because assuming I'm assuming that I will have a baby, and we'll be readjusting, but I'll try to keep you updated on all of that. And the best way to stay updated is to follow my Instagram, which is Instagram at Everything's Relative Podcast. Does all of that make sense? Let me know if you need clarification, please. But all you really need to know today is that my talk is with Denise. Don't be fooled by her demeanor. Buckle up, folks, for a wild tale. This is Everything's Relative. I'm Eve Sturgis. Welcome to episode 6. I'm just going to start recording just so that we have the tape going. We don't have to worry about it. I will edit it. We won't have all of our chit chat included. So I'm here with Denise. I'm in a library. We're in a room. We were just discussing. We feel like we're in a fishbowl. It's kind of a glass, a glass study room in a library. But they've been kind enough to give it to us for 2 hours. So we're just going to talk about your experience, whether you call it an NPE experience or a DNA discovery. What do you call it? How do you describe it to people?
A nightmare? No.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay too.
NPE.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't, my story is a little crazy because it actually started in 2009 when a girl came forward saying that my dad was her dad.
Okay.
And so
I already have questions. Up to that point, were your parents married?
they're still married.
Still married, but this girl came forward, and was she older or younger than you?
She is, we are 21 days apart.
Oh, okay.
So basically
All right.
the
Well, I have
same
a lot of
age.
questions that probably your mother and you had. So, okay. All right. So she came forward 2009 and said,
She wrote letters and said, I think I'm looking for Frank. I'm not going to say last name. And I believe he's my father. And so I called my brother because I didn't want to upset my mom.
so
You
she
know what I mean?
contacted you.
She sent us letters. My brother got one, I got one. Apparently she had been sending them to everybody but with the last name.
Thorough. Being
Yeah.
thorough. Okay.
So, well, she had been looking since she was 18. So, I called my brother, because I didn't want to upset my mom. And so we talked about it. And then I decided to call her. And so I called her and, I was listening to the story and I'm like, okay, this is
You called the girl, not your mom.
Debra.
The sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
And listened to her story, and it was just sounding like, this sounds like it could have happened.
It was tracking.
Yeah. So then my brother and we went to our parents and sat down and talked. My dad denied it. He just denied it. My mom was upset, that. She wanted him to take a DNA test. The Debra.
Debra did.
Yeah. And he didn't want to. So we were like ready to take his toothbrush, take, hair, whatever we could do to do it. So they did a straight paternity test. And it was an at-home one though. And the results came back that he was not the father. And
Oh, she was wrong.
well, no, but at this point in time, we thought, yes, she was wrong. So, and at this time, I had talked to her a couple times and I felt really bad listening to how she grew up. And, I felt bad, like I was drawn to her. And so it came back that she wasn't. And, everything went on. And then I think it was about...
Much to your dad's relief. And
yeah, because he denies...
wife's relief.
At this time, he's still denying that he never slept with her mother. So my parents, they were dating for 9 years. They were getting ready to have a wedding. And he had, they lived in Boston. He was right out of school. He had a job offer in Boston and a job offer in LA. And he didn't want to be in the snow. So he went down to LA. So he was down here for a couple months before, came back. So he met, so came back and they got married the end of September. So, so I just felt bad for her. So I don't know what happened. She popped into my head and it was like 2012. And
okay, so the DNA test said, or the paternity test said, like, no, he's not the dad.
it
And
was 99.99% not the father.
no, and so you guys were like, oh, I'm so sorry. Continue on your journey.
Yeah.
We'll all just go on with our
Yeah.
lives. Okay.
So
2012, 3 years later,
Yeah. I opened Pandora's box and I message her and I'm like, did you ever find your dad? And she says, no, I still believe that he's my dad. And I'm like, but you guys did a DNA test. She goes, I just don't know about that. And I'm like, if you want to buy a DNA test, I'll take a DNA test. She lives in Albuquerque, so she was down on vacation. So I met her up in Carlsbad. My brother wanted nothing to do with this. He's like, I'm not going to take it.
He was happy to close that door.
Yeah. So I went down, met her, my husband and I, and she resembled my cousins back east. And I'm like, this is weird, So did the DNA test. The results come back. We did 23andMe. Results come back, and it says we're not related. So I'm like, she goes, I just feel that he's my dad. And I'm like, well, you need to move on because he's not. Here you have 2 tests.
Right. Oh, okay.
And I'm like, you're going to have to try to move on and figure it out, And so that didn't go very well because then, there was, well, I know your dad slept with my mom. And I'm like, regardless if they slept together, you're not,
right.
We're not related. And I never opened up the authenticity part of my test. I just,
because it was just about that. It was just about Debra.
I didn't think anything of myself. So that was 2012. So off and on, I checked in, I think, a little bit later because she had some names. And I remember one of them was Caputo. And I was like, oh, did you find anybody, And it was like always, no. And then 2016, she started matching on Ancestry with some of the family members on my dad's side. So, yeah, and she sent an email to me, and she said, have you told Frank that I'm matching up with his family? And I said, no, I haven't. I go, I don't understand this. We have 2 tests, and, and then she said something, she goes, I think you need to look at your results because I noticed you don't have Italian in you. And I'm like, oh, that's strange, so I didn't think anything of it.
Okay, I'm like one step ahead of you and realizing where this is going. Okay.
So I was getting ready to in the past 4 years, I've had 3 major operations. So I didn't even open it. And I remember it was 4th of July, 2016, and we're going to my mom's, and I see this post from my grandmother's sister. She's in her 90s, and she goes, Carol, right on Facebook,
right.
Carol, there's a girl saying that she's Frank's daughter, or Katie's granddaughter. And so I messaged her and I'm like, we know who that is. Just don't talk to her because, we've done DNA, this and that. So I got there, I said something to my mom. And so, my dad called my aunt and, was
cleared it up.
Yeah. So moving on. So this past June, so I was supposed to talk with her, and then with the surgeries, I couldn't. So in June, my husband's adopted, and he was getting ready to do a DNA test to see if we could find out, anything about him. So I had joined DNA detectives and adoption search, all these things. So I was already looking in all this stuff. Well, I seen this post on DNA detectives that she wrote, and basically saying,
were you searching for her in it, or it just came up and you saw it? And you're like, oh, there she is again. Okay.
Yeah, and because it was I think that somebody else took this test and it wasn't him, and I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, what is wrong? And so I write on there, no, there was 2 witnesses, it was him, and so I started looking into everything. And then I go into mine and I see that I am 50% Jewish. And I'm like, I'm just, I don't even think at that point I was thinking he wasn't my dad. I told my husband and my best friend, she's like, oh, Denise, she goes, that DNA was done in 2012. You probably need to redo it. And I'm like, this is, just crazy. So it's 4th of July. We're up at my mom's, and I go in there and I go, Mom, my DNA test came back. And I go, I was just looking at it, and it says, I'm Jewish. I don't have any Italian in me. And there was a whole bunch of people there. So she she didn't say anything. She goes, that's strange, So,
But otherwise she didn't flinch.
No.
Like didn't pale or anything, yeah.
So August comes around, and my brother was taking my parents on like a week cruise with him and his family. And I was watching the dog. So I go over there and I just happened to say, I go, Scott, did you ever do that test, that DNA test? He goes, yeah. And I go, can I see it? I go, because mine says that I don't have Italian in me. He goes, oh, you're just creating drama, and I'm like, no, it really says that I'm half Jewish. I go, I have no Italian. I have mom, but no Italian. So I go, will you show me, because he did 23andMe, but he didn't share his. He didn't want his out.
He didn't want public, right?
Yeah. So we go up into the office. This is a Monday. We go up in the office and I see he's got the Italian and he's got my mom. And I'm like, Scott, I go, you realize what this means? He goes, oh, Denise, you came out of mom. And I'm like, yeah, I know I came out of mom, but I don't think he's my dad. He goes, Denise, let's just deal with this when I come back. And I go, when you come back, we're going to share information. So this was on a Monday. So Friday comes, and my cousins were...
How did you feel at that point?
I was just thinking that maybe it was wrong, but then I'm like, I don't think it had sunk in yet. Because I had like my girlfriend telling me, oh, you need to redo it. And I'm like, I'm not going to redo it. And even my brother, he's messaging me that day on the cruise, and he's like, you need to order a DNA test. You need to retake it. Something's wrong with yours, this and that. So I guess that day, my mom had seen a text message, and she thought it said, Dad's not my dad. And so she freaked out. And so my brother and his wife were sitting there, are you sure there's could Denise have gotten switched at the hospital? Is there, and she's like, no. And I guess she was sick the whole week. So they came back Friday.
I mean, who wouldn't be sick the whole week?
Really. So Friday comes along, and I had cousins out, and I met them down in Santa Monica. And the one cousin, she's like my dad's first cousin, but we call them aunt and uncle. So she had to give up a baby for adoption. So we're sitting there talking, and she goes, yeah, Michael ordered me this DNA kit, and I'd sent away. And she goes, then I have this person come along and says, I'm her cousin. And I'm like, I didn't know you when we were little, so I don't know you now. And I'm like, oh, what is her name? And so she goes digging it up, and it's Debra. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay,
Debra is everywhere.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm like, and my husband's away. I'm like 2.5 hours away from home, and I have the kids in the car, and they don't know anything about this. And I'm like just going crazy because I need to talk to somebody. I didn't tell the family about any of this because I wasn't going to tell them right then.
Yeah.
I needed to know.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
it's fraught.
Yeah. So I'm driving home, and my husband, I've called my husband, he's like, I'm getting on the plane. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. He goes,
let me guess, Debra.
Yeah, he did. Because the week before, it was kind of funny. I kept talking about her, and my friend goes, why are you so obsessed with Debra? She goes, will you get over this? You guys have done the DNA test. And I'm like, I don't know what it is, Lisa. I go, it's just bothering me. And so I'm calling my brother Friday night, and he's not answering. And so Saturday morning comes along, and he's not answering. So I'm like, share your results with me now. I'm like, come on. And so he's still not answering. So I call my nephew. I go, will you please tell your dad to do what he needs to do? So yeah.
That's funny. I bet yeah. He loved that.
Well, I guess my brother had come back that day and Saturday morning, and he asked my mom one more time before. So he shared, and it said we were half siblings, and I couldn't believe it. And then I call my brother, and he's not even answering the phone. And I'm like going crazy. I start crying. I'm like, what is going on? And so I'm like, we're going over there. So my husband comes with me because my mom watches my brother's kids Thursday and Friday. So we go down there, and I walk in. I go, we need to talk. She goes, I don't want to hear Debra's name one more time. And I said,
everyone is sick of Debra.
Yeah. I go, this isn't about Debra. This is about me. And she goes, what are you talking about? I go, Mom, why did my DNA just come? I go, Scott and I are half siblings. She goes, I want to see this. I don't understand what you're saying. And so I see her getting like panicky. And then my husband's like, Mom, is there a chance? And she's like, can you give me a minute? I want to see this. And so then she's looking, I'm trying to show her this, and she really doesn't know what she's looking at. And he's like, Mom, is there a chance? And she goes, yes, there might be a chance. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm just in shock, because I never, ever expected this.
Yeah, this was just not even on your radar.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it just wasn't. When I was a kid, I always asked where my freckles came from, because they didn't have freckles. And I'm like, I have freckles. And, I had real light
Jewish
skin,
freckles.
I guess. So she blurts out, I was raped. And so then I start really getting upset.
Mm-hmm. Right, so that's a darkness.
Yeah, and I go in the other room.
Had you even considered that?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
Yeah. And she felt like so I go running into the bathroom, because like my brother's kids are outside, and I'm just like going, oh my God, she was raped. And Bill's like, my husband Bill, he's like, why did you just talk to her like that? He goes, you don't need to talk to her like that. And she's like, you don't need to be here. And he's like, she's my wife. Yes, I need to be here, and you don't need to talk like that. So then I come back out, and I'm like,
drama.
Yeah, I'm like, Bill, stop yelling at her. And I'm still sitting here crying hysterically. And she goes, she goes, no, I wasn't raped. And I'm like, why would you say you were raped? So she brings me in the other room, and she's hysterical, and she's like, Denise, she goes, I swear to you, I was not raped. And I'm like, she goes, I just felt like you guys were, on top of me. You like,
right, too fast, too furious for her to think.
And I'm just, because, once I heard rape, everything else just went out the window. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm like, because, I'm just like, I can't believe that she still had me. And, I'm wondering if, in my head, I'm thinking, if every time she looks at me, is she seeing this guy?
Oh, millions of questions.
Yeah. So we go in the room, and she's all, she goes, his name was Michael, and she goes, he worked at your uncle's bar. He was a bartender, and one night your aunt wanted to stay with your uncle for a little bit longer, and, and it was a one-night thing.
Right, one thing led to another.
Yeah, and I'm just floored.
Sexy bartenders.
I don't know. So
in Boston.
In Boston, yeah. So I'm just, I'm in shock. I don't even know what to say, but I keep having this rape thing in my head, And so no, he was a gentleman, and, told me afterwards that if you end up pregnant, I can't marry you, but she goes, I'm not pregnant. And she goes, I'm getting married.
Right.
She's like, I'm not going to be pregnant. So, so I'm just like, so she tells me that she had told my dad about her. Oh, so she had told my dad before that she had this one night stand, because she didn't want any lies. Okay. She tells me they got married, she had a period, and she didn't think anything of it. And I'm just like, even when you didn't think anything? Because, she's like, no. So, I don't know whether to believe her or not. And
right.
Because
there's no way to
know.
There's just no way to really know.
No, because, the only people that know is her, him, and God. That's it. The people that were there. So so then my dad comes in. He doesn't even know what's going on. He thinks it's about Debra. And then I'm like, yeah. He's like, I didn't sleep
Debra,
with
the
her
mystery
mom.
woman in your life.
It was just, so I'm like, I told my brother, I said, you need to share your DNA with her. So then my quest at that minute was, I was more concerned about her than I was about myself, because I think I was still in shock.
Yeah, well, that might have just been an easier concept.
So in my head, I'm going, because once the cousin had matched with her, I'm like, either he's covering for somebody, because like I said, she looked like my uncle's kids, okay? And my brother and I, we didn't, we have Irish and English, so we didn't look like our cousins from back east, So we looked more like my mom's side of the family. So I was like on this crusade for that, but as far as she told me, there was only one other possibility. His name was Michael, didn't have a last name.
And your brother's like at work
No,
during
he
all
was
this, or
out,
did he come home?
He was out doing stuff.
Okay,
it was
but
like
he
a
was,
Saturday.
Okay,
Yeah.
but he was not home. Is the
No,
point?
he
was not
wasn't home.
So this is all happening in his house, but
Yeah.
he doesn't.
Yeah, and the kids are outside.
He's like at Home Depot.
We're telling him to go, stay out there. So, I went into a separate room. So my dad, we're just like, you need to come clean. We're back to Debra. You need to come clean. And it was just that day was like all. So I remember, I just went home.
And this was in 2016?
This was 2000. When this just happened, it was this past August, 2018.
So not even a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Caught up. So
Just-
this
yeah.
is fresh for
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah. So she's telling me, we'll find him and I'll go with you and I'm going to be right by your side. And I'm like, wait. I don't know if I even want to meet this person. I go, how do we even know if we're going to find him? I go, you don't even know his last name. She's like, I'm going to call your uncle and, see if he can remember. And so we go home and I'm just like, I had to basically lock my door because we're in like a small place. I got 4 kids at the house. They can see, I was just,
Sure.
I was a mess.
I'm sorry. Did your dad that raised you, did he know at this point? At the house when you said he came in, did he?
It was all, I didn't sleep with her mom.
Oh, because he was focused on thinking this was about Debra. Right,
and he's
okay,
got
okay.
like a hearing problem, so,
Right.
He can't, we'll be talking about something and all of a sudden something comes out of his mouth and you're like, what conversation are you in? So he didn't even realize it. But then, my mom was trying to tell him, but then my mom told me while we were in that room, she said, I seen this text this week and I went to she said, well, in July, she went to my dad and said, Denise's DNA didn't come out with Italian. He goes, what are you talking about? She acts just like my mother. She has to be mine. And he didn't want to do a DNA test. She goes, we need to do a DNA test. And he thought that she was tricking him because of Debra.
For Debra.
Mm-hmm. I know. And so.
Debra, call me.
So that was July. So this week there on the cruise, she went back to the room, and she's like, "Oh my God, Frank, Scott, Scott knows now," and she didn't want to tell my brother anything until she told me first.
Okay.
So,
okay. That's considerate. That makes sense to me.
So like I said, I went home. Apparently, when my brother got back, they went upstairs and they were trying to Google this Michael, and nothing was coming up. And I'm just
Michael,
like, yeah,
Boston, bartender.
Yeah. And I'm just like, you need to share your DNA with Debra. And he didn't want to at first. I'm like, no, you need to do it. And my mom's like, no, just do it because, we need to figure this out because obviously either he's covering for somebody because we're like, maybe one of the uncles came down, And so I called her and I said, Scott's going to share with you. And it came out half siblings. So, yeah. So, so we're now experiencing somebody coming in and then me looking for this. And it's just, my dad was like, I don't think you need to go find anybody. And I'm like, Dad, I need to see a picture of this person. I need to try. He goes, yeah, but you have your family. And I'm like, I know, but at the time when he's saying this to me, I couldn't even look at my dad for a long time without crying. I was just so sad. And I just felt like I was hurting him, even though I didn't do anything, but I just felt, So my mom actually bought the ancestry kit for me, sent it in. It came back like September 15th, I think. It was a Friday. My results came in, and so I start going in trying to look, and I'm looking for Michael, and I'm like on this other side. So I go on the DNA detectives page, and
Okay, and your dad still wasn't coming clean, even though Scott and
this
Debra
came
up
out,
as...
and she said, "You might as well come clean." And he's like,
Come
"Well,
on, Frank."
he didn't say anything." So they had gone home, and he, I guess, said to my mom, "Let's go have a drink." And she said, "I'm not going to have a drink with you until you want to tell me the truth." And I guess then he broke down to her and said, "Yeah, I did sleep with her, and but I didn't know about her." And he goes, "I didn't know this, and he goes, "I was so afraid of losing you." And
So okay.
they're getting ready to celebrate their 50th
Right,
wedding
and they've been together
anniversary.
forever.
Yeah.
And they both had an indiscretion during this
know.
2-month break
Yeah.
as young people. Okay.
I know, and they both ended up with pregnancies. It's crazy.
That is kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
And
Considering how
yeah.
miraculous a pregnancy is. That's, oh boy. Oh man,
Well, then,
okay.
Yeah, so he broke down, and then he wanted to, when they came back the following week, and he had called me up and he wanted to talk to me, so we went up and we were talking alone, and it was hard, and he's apologizing, saying this is all my fault and this and that, and my question to him was, what did you do to that DNA test that you took? And he's like, Denise, I didn't do anything. He goes, your mom and Scott were there. I wasn't there, because that's what I was thinking. He did something to the DNA test, but he was, come to find out, well, he's a heavy smoker. He had a meeting, he had drank, ate, and came home, and the test was there. My mom wanted it done, so they did the test. So that's the only thing we can think, because it didn't come back like inconclusive, or it just came back. And when you go and you read, they're saying people that smoke heavily, and you're not supposed to eat or drink.
So smoking can be a thing that messes up the results?
I guess. And well, that's what it says. They don't want you doing anything like a half an hour to whatever before.
Okay. I didn't know
Even
that.
just, when you they don't want you to drink anything, eat anything. They want you to, for at least 30 minutes before you do the test.
He'd been smoking and eating and just did it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe and he hasn't done it again since?
No, because Scott came up as
Right. I mean, he doesn't need to.
Yeah. So, so, he just said to me, he's like, nothing's going to change. You're my number one. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I still couldn't look at him. It's just like I don't know. I felt so heartbroken. And my mom and I, we're a really close family. That's why I just didn't even see this coming. I mean, it was such a shock, because they had dated for so long. And it was like, it was more accepting having her come in than it was with finding out the surprise about myself. It was just shock. I mean,
yeah, that is left field.
Yeah, I just never ever would have thought I wasn't treated any differently. I was loved. And my mom and I are so close, so this is killing us right now.
I was going to ask you the next.
It's hard.
My next question was, what's your relationship like with your mom right now?
We have ups and downs. In the beginning, it was just, she would tell, you need to get over this, and I know how you feel. And I'm like, you need to stop telling me you know how I feel, because you don't know how. No, I do. And I'm like, no, you don't. And I'm like, I couldn't.
Maybe if she knew how you felt, she wouldn't suggest you get over it.
Yeah. Well, she knew. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know. It just, I don't even think I talked to her, because usually we talk a couple times a day, and we see each other every week, and I had to back away. And then, but it didn't last for long, because I can't, my brother was like, Denise, they're older, and, we don't know how long they have. And then he was like, I wish this would have happened to me. And I'm like, well, that wouldn't have been good, because they were married when they had you, so.
Thanks, but no thanks, Scott.
He goes, I could have handled it better. And I'm like, I go, you say that, but you don't really know how this feels. I felt like, but I didn't have any feelings towards this Michael. Mm-hmm. None. And I don't feel.
Your identity's been whipped out, but the replacement, there's no replacement with him or longing.
Yeah, I didn't have I just wanted to see his picture. And I still don't have, I think because I had such a great dad, that I'm not missing that. Whereas Debra didn't have a father figure growing up, and her mom was, in the beginning wasn't so great. So, I think that's why I don't feel this towards him. But plus what I found, well, come to find out, I'm looking for a Michael, and that's not even his name. Yeah.
Mom.
Well, I was looking in the wrong direction for this Michael because, I wanted to see it. And so I got a search angel to help me. And like within 24 hours, she had me matching with this Engel family. And I'm like, Mom, are you sure his name was Michael? I called her like 3 times and asked her. She's like, yes, his name was Michael. So my search angel's like, you need to order the death records because there's only one Michael that I'm finding. So I had a second cousin pop up, and I was afraid. He was an attorney, and I was afraid to message him, but I did on that Sunday. And I was getting ready to order the death certificates of one of the women in that section that they had remarried and had a son named Michael. So, and I just messaged him saying, I think, we might be related through Michael. And he goes, well, can you tell me more details? So I'm telling him 1969 in Revere Beach at a bar. He goes, well, I was too young for the establishments then. He goes, but I did have a cousin named Michael, but his legal name is Myron. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not so far off that she would remember Michael.
Yeah, but he went by Michael.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, you're forgiven, Mom.
Yeah. So I'm like, is he alive? He's like, no, he passed away in 2007. And I go, do you have any pictures of him? Because I just want to see a picture. And he's like, if I find any, then I'll let you know. So later that Monday, all of a sudden I get a message from, if this is the person that talked to so-and-so, I'm Michael's son. So we're messaging, and he lives in Japan. And he's messaging me, and then he wanted to talk to me, so we just like did a Facebook talk and he's telling me, and he's like, I hope there's no tears there. He goes, he wasn't that great, and I'm like, he wasn't in my life, and we have an older brother and sister, but I didn't know about them until 2016.
That's what he's saying? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So there's 2 older siblings, and then I would be his third, and then Michael's the fourth, the youngest.
Okay, so he was active.
Yeah.
He was active as a bartender on the beach.
I guess, yeah. And I guess, like, the family, they keep secrets, and, and basically everybody on that side's kind of gone that would have any answers. So I've been talking to Michael and my half-brother. His results came in, I think it was like right before Thanksgiving. And it was so funny because when it came in, because this other person, I was waiting for the death certificate.
Right.
My search, she had everything, like everybody's Facebook profile, and it was like, she was the I'm like, how did you get all this? It's like the FBI.
Oh, man.
So I'm looking, and there was this picture of this little girl, and she looked like me when I was younger, and then 2 of his grandsons looked like 2 of my boys, and I'm like, this has to be him. And I was kind of hoping for that one because I'm listening to this, and I'm like, oh. And I just, I would have liked him to hear him that he was, I can't say because I don't know him. And I never met him, and I'm just hearing from him. And I don't have contact with the other 2 siblings. The older brother, the first one, he lives actually in Hollywood, like he's an hour away from me. And he finally just
one of your siblings.
Yeah, half sibling.
Half siblings
yeah.
from this. Okay.
Yeah, from the biological father. From Myron. I call him Myron. I don't refer to him as my. I can't. I just don't. I don't have
Man,
feelings.
it's different for every single person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Because and then I sit here and should I be having feelings? And I'm like, I just don't. I don't. So.
I don't think there's any shoulds.
I know. So, it's been difficult, but I'm trying to take it as the blessing is that I've met Michael. He's excited. He's coming out in June.
From Japan?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to come this summer, but now because of this, he's coming. And
Did he grow up in the Boston area?
he grew up in Boston, and then he graduated and moved there like when he was 22. He just left because he was like shipped around from house to house and from family to family. So he only lived with Myron for about 3 years.
Okay, so he wasn't close with him
No,
either.
mm-mm.
Interesting.
No. So that's what I'm saying. It's like I got really lucky how I was raised.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, you don't even know until you see all the other possibilities.
Yeah. Because the other two they like when he passed away, they didn't even go to the funeral. And that's like when Michael found out. But the Jewish side of the family, they were prejudiced because Michael's half black. So that was a big thing because everybody in that family only dated Jewish people, and apparently Myron was equal opportunity. So,
Okay.
he didn't keep it. And when you look at a picture of him, he looks like this, like an Italian bad boy. He does,
Myron does?
Yeah, he does. He does. And then I look at him, and I was like looking at their pictures, and there's like, I don't resemble them at all.
Huh.
So, but
So
when I
no
got,
answer to the freckles.
yeah. When I got that DNA back and it said that we were, siblings, the first person I want to talk to was my dad. So I went over to talk to my dad, and we had like a talk for over an hour. And then like that's when I realized that, you know what, he's fine. He just wants me to be fine, Like we were always like huggy, feely type, but like when this first happened, I could just, even now when they hug me, like they just like they don't let go for a while, So,
Yeah, I think it's really scary for the parents, regardless of their personal, whatever their story is, from a secrecy place or a shame place, or I think that their fears that they're going to lose their kid I think that's really real. I don't know. I would like some parents to come talk to me, but I think that's the fear, is that you're going to
probably. I mean, I don't know.
like, I'm in Myron's family now. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, no, none of them, like everybody's gone. And obviously with Michael, he's, just turned 46, and he just found out about the other two, when they, so secrets.
So many secrets.
Yeah.
And it just blows open your understanding of family on so many, like, I keep saying that, I've said this so many times today, but like on so many levels. Like I don't know how to, it's just tangled and layered, and your understanding of what family means.
Mm-hmm.
No matter, I think no matter what you think you believe, it gets pretty shattered.
Yeah. I mean, because, you don't expect, especially like they have such a great relationship, and I never seen anything that would like, I just, you look up to them, because then I go back from, I don't hate my mom. I'm disappointed. I feel like when I went to her and said that in July, I feel like she had opportunities to come to me, but I don't think I don't know. She obviously,
Right, and think about how many years it had been. And I don't know. I like to think that I would handle it differently, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's like with my husband being adopted, his mom, never wanted to tell him anything wouldn't tell us anything about the adoption, this and that. And like we had a little health issues in the beginning with my daughter, and we'd go to her and beg her, and she wouldn't say anything. But this whole time I thought, oh, well, I know my half, and now I know a quarter, and now, what I'm finding out isn't so great. So now I'm telling my husband, I'm like, he goes, I'm not doing this DNA,
Your husband's like,
no, he's like, I can't.
If you were the example of what can happen, I would rather not participate.
Well, he's so funny because he's come to our meetings, he's come to the side group meetings that we have with our NPE. And it was funny because I had never watched like those morning shows, and I turned on the TV, and it was, I think it was it Good Morning? It wasn't Good Morning. I can't think of which one it was, and this was on, Catherine was on there. So I was like, oh, so then that's when so he just realized, like on our second meeting that he wasn't an NPE. I go, no, you know that you were adopted. He's like, oh, I thought I was NPE also. But
it's when it's a surprise. That's the element.
Because I try to tell him, I go, Bill, you knew that you were adopted. I didn't know this. This is different. And he's like, well, it really is. And I'm like, yeah, but it is. But with him, he's been really supportive. And with him going to the meetings and stuff, he hears like everyone else talking and, you know, how we feel. And so that's
great.
Good. Yeah,
that's probably something more partners could do. I don't want to say what anyone should do, but something to think about.
Yeah. It's been good.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, have bad times. I mean, the holidays were really bad.
Yeah.
We had stuff that popped up that wasn't good. So, you know, and then that's when my emotions go. And I had to tell my family, I'm like, look, if I'm emotional, just let me be emotional. And I have to deal with it my way. If I'm not bothering anybody, then it shouldn't affect you, right? So that was something my friend, she goes, you don't have to explain to anybody how you feel. I go, I don't even know what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know either how I feel.
You don't have to tell anybody how to, you know. I'm like, but I go, I don't even know what I'm trying to explain. She's like, you don't owe anybody an explanation. And that like really helped. And then I like relayed that message to my mom. Then it seemed like, you know, everything was good. And then, you know, just, I haven't told everybody yet. I've only told a certain amount of friends. But I know when, because Debra she came out in September and met the family. And then she came back for Thanksgiving.
Man, so she's in the mix. Of course, she's been a part of this podcast the whole time. But, okay, so she's still in the mix. So there is like, it's almost like overlapping circles, like, or something of like, you're going through your experience and your discovery. She's going through her discovery, and your parents are going through a discovery, and then your brother is also having his own experience of
and we're all at different
learning about who his parents really are.
Levels. So it's like, you know, we're all experiencing different things. So, you know, when I see other people writing or whatever, like about how when they see the family, their biological family in pictures, then I'm like, oh, she probably feels like this. But then, you know, I had to actually tell her I needed to take a step back from her.
That makes sense to me.
I needed to go through my stuff. And
she knows now that her journey, like her adventure, like exposed yours.
Well, I had said to her, I go, you know, because I feel like an idiot that I didn't open this up in 2012 because I could have solved this way back then, you know, for her. And I go, why didn't you tell me? I go, you know, I had to go back into emails and like read what was written. And I was like, how did I miss this? But I had, like I said, I had many surgeries. Like right when she had contacted me in 2009, I just had a knee replacement and I got, you know, I wasn't doing well.
Well, like life is still happening during all of this. That has been my experience, is like, life is still happening. You can't just stop everything. Yeah. So far, I have not been able to stop anything. To refocus everything. You can't stop anything to refocus everything onto this new chapter that you weren't even asking for.
Right.
Yeah, and you have you have family, you have kids, you have your life, you have your job. Like it. Yeah, I really relate to feeling like
set in your ways.
I don't know that I can. Yeah. I mean, it sounds flippant, but it's like almost I don't have time right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, well, you know, we were having this like big Thanksgiving, and we were over like the night before at my brother's, and her and my sister-in-law start talking about the DNA test, right? And we're still fresh, and I didn't want this brought up because my brother didn't want to tell the kids, and my mom was worried that my kids were going to think of them differently. I'm like, you're still, and I was so upset, I had to tell my friends all, Denise, you need to tell them, because if they hear this, you know, on the side, then, well, they were like devastated.
Your kids were?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
They were devastated because I had to tell them about her coming in and then this happening to me, and they were like, he's not my grampy. And I'm like, he is your grampy. I go, he's my dad. He is your grampy. Nothing's going to change. And, so my brother has 6, I have 4. So he told his 3. Well, I just said, I have to tell my kids, and our kids are going to talk. So you need to let your kids know. So the 3 younger ones don't know about me. But then, then the questions come, like his 9-year-old. How did all of a sudden we get another aunt? And it's like, oh, well, she lived in another state. So, and they're like confused. So they're really going to be confused when they see my brother come out.
Right.
So,
Oh my gosh.
But yeah,
okay.
so it's been hard, but like I said, I had to take a step back, and there's been like a couple things. I don't think Debra means it, but like she even asked me one time she asked me if I was going to change my name, and I said, change my name to what? And she said, your mom's maiden name. I go, well, why would I do that? And that really upset me. I was like,
yeah, I totally.
So I told
I see those discussions, and I'm like, and that seems. I also am sensitive to that idea.
Well, because she said my mom's maiden name. I was like, wait a second. No, my is my last name, and I'm not changing it. Because if she would ask me if I was going to, then I would be like, but that, and so I'm telling my mom, and they kind of got upset about that, and I just said, okay, well, if there's any more of these mishaps, then I'm done. I go, you guys can have your relationship. I don't need to be involved. I go, because to me, I feel like I'm being I feel like I took away her life, even though her mother, if she knew, or I don't think she really knew who the father was in the beginning, but she could have put him on the birth certificate. You know what I mean? The state could have went after him. I mean, they could have found, if there could have been something.
You feel like it affected Debra's life? That's what you're saying?
Well, I feel like, because I know when she came out and she's seen our family the first time, she was like, this is the family I always dreamt of.
Oh,
and
that's
so,
hard.
Yeah, so I feel guilty. It's like the other day I was posting a picture.
You feel guilty just from 2012?
I just feel guilty for the whole thing because of how she grew up and didn't know my dad, as a kid, and didn't have that experience, didn't have a male in her life, didn't have a dad. And so that makes me feel bad. It's just like listening to Michael's story. I feel bad for him, and that's just my nature. But I just felt like just some of these things that have been said from her, I just feel like almost like, I don't know, I'm just very sensitive, I guess, but I feel like, I don't know if I'm getting if it's like a sarcastic remark that she's making, or she's trying to be sly, because we always really got along, and now it's like, I'm very reserved now with her. So, because I had to just take my step back.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that it has to be said, that people, everyone, it seems like all the people that come into these situations, we all are all really different people with really different understandings of what is okay and what is not okay, and what is an okay thing to ask, or what makes perfect sense.
For this.
Right. What's lots of people are discussing the name change thing, which just didn't even occur to me, and but there's some people that's the first thing they think of. So you just have to remember that I don't know, everybody's coming from different walks of life.
Exactly.
It's so
she
diverse.
Yeah, she actually, because she goes by her mom's name, and because she's not married, but she has a son and a partner, and so she put, all of a sudden you seen Debra. That was weird, seeing that, she put it in her Facebook thing.
She changed her last name.
Just on Facebook. She has Debra and then her last name, her one that she was given. But it's kind of weird to see.
So for her, it was maybe completing a missing piece.
Oh, definitely. Because she had been searching
forever.
Since she was 8.
Yeah.
Mom told her when she was 18. Apparently she had come to the house when she was 18.
Oh, wow.
And so, but nothing, it never was pursued. Because in my head, I was like, oh, Dad, if this test would have just come out, I would have never have had to known. But, but I mean, that's why I say my blessing is having Michael, and, I guess, I have to, and my kids. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have my family.
Right. No,
and I wouldn't
absolutely.
trade my kids in for the world, so. You know, they're just having, you know, it's hard because we're seeing it from all aspects. So when I listen to somebody going in and not having a good experience, like I can see, you know, but it's like, you know, it's like what you said, that everybody's different, and, you know, we've all been raised differently, and, you know, it's just, it's different.
So for you, because you're still pretty fresh in this, less than a year, what do you feel like there is advice that you would give somebody that just found out, or something that you wish someone had said to you?
I just think that my biggest thing that I've learned from this is that you need to take a step back first before, and really, I mean, I'm still processing, but I feel like you need to take a step back and like think before you just go react. But I would have liked my mom to have come to me. You know, that's just the whole big disappointment. I just think people need to be aware when they take this DNA test, because like I didn't take it for fun, so.
Yeah, you didn't even take it for fun.
No, I didn't. I did it to help her move on. Oh my God, your surprise
was like.
Yeah.
You didn't even, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing the story.
You're
I really
welcome.
hope, I mean, I actually know that it will help people, but yeah, and I also really hope for you that you, especially with your relationship with your mom, gets more peaceful.
Yeah, it has
for you,
been.
that you, with time, that you guys find a place in the middle. But yeah, not a single story has been the same, and you win today for sure. It's not a contest. You guys.
Yeah,
it's
I don't want to win.
But really interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off.
Okay. So did you guys follow that? Even though Denise talked to me, sounded so calm. Both her parents cheated on each other at the same time, and both of those experiences created pregnancies. There's so much to unpack right there. I just thought Denise was so sweet and brave to tell her story. And one cool thing that happened that came out of the interview is that Denise told her newfound brother, Michael, the one who lives in Japan, about this podcast. And I got some messages from him on Instagram. So she contacted him, and then he contacted me. So now I have a face to that name. And they've both promised to keep me up to date about their visits and what develops with their sort of new siblingship. He's coming out to visit from Japan. So, yeah, so we'll see. I hope that they let me know how it all goes, and that we can kind of continue to stay in touch and follow this new adventure that nobody asked for. But yeah, I was just so grateful that Denise was so honest about all the ways that she's felt over the past year, and I think that she really hit on something when she talks about the roller coaster of the experience. And I think that the most important advice that she had for anyone was to take your time. The shock of it can really inspire some impulsive decisions and actions, guys. And I just cannot emphasize enough how many times I've seen that happen with negative results, or results that just were just unnecessary. Maybe if you had just taken a minute and paused before sending an email or making a phone call or making a decision or telling certain people, or acting on anger or grief or fear. So that's just something I just want to really echo Denise's sentiment, that taking your time to process this could not be a better mandate or a better suggestion. For me, personally, it's been over a year, and I'm still crawling through this at a snail's pace. And there might be consequences to that, but this is how, like, I'm comfortable processing this. I want another word other than experience. Like, kaleidoscopic mindfuck? Can I call it that? Anyway. That was episode 6, everybody. If you have got anything to say or a story to tell me, email me, Eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com. You can keep in touch social media, at everythingsrelative not.com, at everythingsrelative podcast. That's my Instagram, and that's our Facebook. I hope your 4th of July was as fun yesterday as I am hoping mine will be for me tomorrow. Okay, join us for 2 weeks. No, join us in 2 weeks for episode 7. And I will see you later. Bye. Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve Sturgis is a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, but the conversations she has on the podcast are not therapy sessions. Logo design by Ivy McNally and music used with permission by Goodbye the Band.